organized by Crisis Group to discuss our most recent report on Haiti called Locked in Transition, Politics and Violence in Haiti. For those of you who are familiar with our organization, you will find the report in our website. For those of you who are just now coming to Crisis Group, we're an international conflict prevention organization. And if you go to our website, International Crisis Group, then you can find the report, which is currently in English, but will soon have full translation into French and Haitian Creole by the end of the week. I'm very glad to be joined today by four very knowledgeable people on the questions of violence and security in Haiti. We have Diego Darin, who is our analyst for Haiti. We also have Daniel Forti, who is our colleague at the UN advocacy team. And we have two notable Haitian speakers. On the one hand, we have Emmanuela Douyon, who is the founder of Publicité, a remarkable think tank and organization addressing Haitian issues. And we also have Frantz Duval, who is the editor-in-chief of Nouvelliste, the most important newspaper in Haiti. So thank you so much to both of you. A note on the language. So we're going to conduct this event in both Haitian Creole and in English. Some of us will only speak in English and some of us will only speak in Haitian Creole. There is an interpretation little sign on the bottom of your screens where you will be able to choose the channel that you prefer. You can choose to listen to both languages. You can choose English or you can choose Haitian Creole if that is your preference. So please do so. Also, we have opened a Q&A chat that you will see as participants in the bottom of the screen. And if you have questions about anything of what is being discussed, please do write them there, type them, and I will try to address them in the course of the event. We're scheduled to be together for an hour, perhaps slightly more. And so the way in which we're going to do it is I'm going to turn to Diego, who is going to give a brief presentation with the main lessons that we got from the report, our main policy lines and findings. And then I'm going to moderate a conversation between Emmanuela, Frantz, and Daniel, to discuss some of our findings and further questions on this very difficult and important moment in Haiti. So without further ado, I'll turn to Diego. Please, Diego, I'll flag when you're reaching the 10-minute mark.
Yes, thank you very much. So yes, a year ago, there was an unprecedented siege by gangs in Port-au-Prince that prompted a change of government. Formerly rival coalitions that had been fighting each other for control of the capital started collaborating, and they completely paralyzed the city and prevented Prime Minister Henry from returning to Haiti. Then Prime Minister Ariel Henry was in Kenya signing an agreement that would enable the deployment of a Kenya-led security mission. So the most prominent and powerful political and social groups were convened by CARICOM and other foreign partners to a summit that was held in Jamaica, and it was decided that a new transitional government would be established. This new government was to be composed of a 9-member transitional presidential council that would work along a prime minister. The idea was to have all the powerful political players in Haiti within the government so that they would all participate in the political process and keep each other in check. After this meeting in Jamaica, they signed a very important agreement that is known as the 3 April Political Accord that outlined several structures of the general structure of the new government and the agenda for the political transition and the main priorities for the government. It is a very ambitious agenda, and our report makes an assessment of how likely the transitional government is to achieve the goals that it set to itself, focusing on restoring security, holding a constitutional referendum, and organizing elections. But what we have seen is that this government structure that was meant to foster political unity hasn't been working as it was supposed to. endless quarrels over control of key posts in the administration and budgets has absorbed most of the attention of the new Haitian government's attention. First, there was endless fights between then Prime Minister Gary Conille and the Presidential Council. This was somehow resolved when the Presidential Council decided to dismiss Prime Minister Conille and replace him for Prime Minister Fizeme in November. Relationships have been better between the new Prime Minister and the Presidential Council, but now the main sources of tension in this new governance structure is between the groups, the political and social groups that appointed delegates to the Presidential Council and their delegates, because the links between the groups and the representatives have been severed, and these groups don't control anymore the representatives to the Presidential Council. So, although it is far from perfect, this transitional government sought to form a national unity government and was successful in integrating these main political forces, an objective that was elusive for almost 3 years when Prime Minister Henri was in power. So now these sectors that form the government are calling for a complete, well, some of them, for a complete overhaul or a reform of the Presidential Council. We think that the calls to completely change the governance structure should not be heard, but rather to see how the government could be more effective. One step to do that, it would be, of course, to avoid as much as possible political disputes over the distribution of power, which have threatened the government's legitimacy. There is something that was provided by the political accord, which is a body that hasn't been created, which is called the Assembly of Sectors. It would be composed of representatives of each of the 9 sectors that would be tasked with ensuring compliance with the agreement and leading the negotiations to reach consensus throughout the transitional period. So, creating this body that hasn't been established by the transitional authorities would not only enable the Haitian leadership to focus on basic governance, but also to rebuild the links that have been severed between the groups that form the government and the representatives. Um, so this could bring some level of political stability, which is right now the main challenge, so that the government can focus on its priorities. And the government has to rethink his priorities and its deadlines, because the security condition has only worsened in the past year. Holding elections under the current security chaos is not advisable and is in fact unfeasible. The government has envisioned to hold a referendum in May and a first round of elections in November. This objective could only be achieved if there would be an immediate and drastic measures taken to improve security in Haiti. And for now, we can discuss this further after, but we are not saying that this is going to happen. So foreign powers should not pressure the Haitian transitional government to hold elections until the minimum level of security for candidates, voters, and the electoral process can be guaranteed, rather than setting a strict deadline for the polls. The transitional administration should define clear benchmarks and criteria that must be met before elections can take place. This could be done in consultation with the UN and other foreign partners to establish a minimum security threshold required for an election to be conducted. Um, and for the constitution, maybe we can discuss this further as well. Uh, Constitutional reforms, when properly conducted, have been complete game changers for stability and political unity in several countries, South Africa, Uganda, East Timor, and Colombia in the region. But these processes, when and mostly when they are not reforming the constitution according to what is provided by the constitution, because here a reform referendum is not allowed by the constitution, have to and will need a very participatory and inclusive and transparent process. Right now, there is a rushing process with not so inclusive consultations with the Haitian people that could clearly backfire. So there are different ways in which we recommend in our report that specific sources of instability of the constitution could be addressed by executive orders by the transitional authorities, and prepare for a broader reform process when new electoral authorities will be in power. And of course, the main challenge for the Haitian government is to focus on restoring security at a time when gangs control around 90% of the capital, other regions in the country, and as we saw yesterday, with attacks, simultaneous attacks in different parts of the capital, and are maybe preparing to mount a siege on the last free zones, or the areas, the enclaves in Port-au-Prince that are not under their control. So there is an urgent need for more resources and personnel for the Kenya-led mission that is trying to help the Haitian security forces to at least contain the advance of the gangs, and to establish a permanent presence in areas where they are trying to regain control, to protect civilians that are trapped along these battlefronts between the gangs and the security forces. In the current configuration, the foreign mission lacks the resources to effectively assist the Haitian National Police and the armed forces in combating gangs. With very few exceptions, they have not been able to help local securities to regain control over key sites and some of the gang controlled territories. So, our UN analyst will delve deeper into this, into what are the new developments today with a letter that has been sent by the UN Secretary General to strengthen the current mission. But there is a need also for the Haitian authorities to focus on this, because a National Security Council that was supposed to be established on the onset of this new transitional government hasn't been created yet, and these councils would be tasked with articulating with foreign partners matters of security aid.
Thank you, Diego. Right on time. So let me turn to Emmanuela and Frantz. So one of the, as Diego has just explained, perhaps the two sort of core recommendations in the report is to postpone elections, or at least not try to do them this year unless there's a dramatic change in the security conditions, and also to not try to conduct a referendum on the constitutional reform in a few months, in 2 months, as it was the government has announced. Could I get your reactions to those proposals? How do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think about the necessity of conducting these elections vis-a-vis the question of security? Maybe if you don't mind, Emmanuela, I'll turn to you first.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone joining us today. It's my pleasure to be here with you and discussing this very important report. Regarding your question, I agree that although it's very important, it's fundamental that Haiti organize election, it is also as important to make sure that we organize election that maintain their meaning. It should be a way for the people to express their desire to elect people who can represent them, to vote on an agenda that they think is proportionate, like respond to their needs. And in this context, it's less likely that this will be feasible because of the conditions that are described in the report, the conditions on the ground. It's like very difficult to have free elections now. How can election be free when gangs have control to like up to 80% of the territory? Who can campaign in some neighborhood where gangs completely control access to. Then if we have elections where not everyone can campaign the same way, where not every candidate can circulate freely and meet the people where they are not free from the get-go, then it's less likely that the outcome will be fair and it will not be contested. And then also the people who can decide to vote. Gangs can decide to shut down like big areas like wards, etc. And how can we make sure that on election day, they would decide that half of the population of Port-au-Prince cannot vote? It will be a waste of money. It will be another failed attempt. And all those things build up and create mistrust. And Policité conducted a survey. Many people expressed that they do not trust elections. They do not trust the way elections are traditionally organized in Haiti. Therefore, we need to be very careful about not creating more examples of failed elections. There is a book that I read a few years ago. It's about like several case studies on elections in different countries in the world. The title is really one of my favorite titles ever. It's a From the Ballots to Barricade. This is exactly what we've been having in Haiti for a long time. We go straight to the ballots, have some elections that are not well organized, that are contested, and then we start another crisis. Same for the referendum. I do think that our constitution is not perfect. I do think that as a society, we need to get together and decide on a way to make the democratic process easier, to make sure it's easier to respect the law, to apply what's in the constitution. But I also think that it needs to be done in a climate where people are free, where people can debate, where there is a minimum of peace. And now is not a good time, and it will be counterproductive. And as we're seeing now with the transition, I'm going to finish soon, the people who are holding the transition government, the people in the transitional council, they sign an accord and they're not respecting it. This is the clearest example of what is going to happen with any new constitution. If we do not have the right system in place, the right climate, we can have 10 new constitutions, the same thing will happen. All right.
Thank you so much. Frantz, can I ask you, what is your take on the idea of having elections this year, and any reactions to what Emmanuela has said?
Bon, moi, je ne sais pas si bien élection année ça, pour une raison simple, mis à part question sécurité, mais moi, pas attendre en Haïti et quel parti politique a réclamé élection. Je ne pas attendre quel monde dit le candidat pour venir président, ou bien pour venir premier ministre, ou bien pour venir sénateur, pour venir député. Discussion ça n'a pas fait en Haïti actuellement. Il y a des années, elle n'a pas fait en Haïti. Pas de personne qui est candidat, pas de parti politique qui a poussé, qui a demandé pour élection faite. Gouvernement qui l'a, gouvernement transition qui l'a, lui-même tout. La communauté internationale a dit qu'il faut faire élection. Il dit oui, il y a bien élection. Mais personne pas ouais et qu'il y a une détermination, on a poussé pour élection faite en Haïti. Pas de gain ça année passée, pas de gain ça soit Ariel Henry, pas de gain ça année ça. C'est pas un sujet qui est en discussion dans l'opinion publique en Haïti, qui en a fait élection et surtout, qui est-ce qui voulait venir président. Parce que souvent en Haïti, élection, un moteur, c'est qui est-ce qui est candidat. C'est qui l'idée qui a circulé dans la société. Je dis à la tête haïtien pas assez posée pour occuper de pour l'élection. Deuxième chose concernant la constitution, là, tout, un gros menti qu'a fait. Et il y a des rencontres qui sont faites là dans presque tout département géographique, chaque fois avec une trentaine ou cinquantaine de monde sous constitution, nouvelle constitution sous référendum. Donc, après, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord pour un référendum pour changer la constitution? Tout le monde dit oui, sauf que discussion a fait sans que pas qu'un texte. Pas un projet de constitution, pas une idée forte dans la constitution, mais discussion a fait, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord pour changer la constitution? Oui, nous sommes d'accord pour changer la constitution. Mais nous sommes d'accord pour changer la constitution. Sous qui article, sous qui sujet, sous qui thématique, discussion ça n'a pas fait. Et c'est même pas que tu passé, les Jovenel Moïse, tu as essayé de changer la constitution déjà. Il a fait une grosse campagne avec comme l'État pour dire tout le monde voter oui. Mais personne ne va voter oui sur qui ça? Parce que l'autorité n'a pas fait texte circuler, pas vraiment débat sur le sujet de société, pas de débat sur qui changement pour faire dans au statut constitution. Mais il faut une discussion, est-ce que nous d'accord changer la constitution? Là encore, c'est un coup pour élection, c'est de faux débats qui ne peuvent déboucher sur rien pour le moment. Un, conditions pas réunies, moun yo pas tête frette pour réfléchir dans la constitution jodi a. Deux, pas de conditions sécurité, j'ai Emmanuela Douyon dit là, pour moun al faire campagne, pour moun al faire organiser une machine électorale. M'pa quoi jodi en Haïti, personne croit qu'il y a ni référendum ni élection en 2025.
Thank you so much. And maybe let me just turn to Diego, because Diego and I were just in Washington, D.C. for the last 2 days speaking to policymakers, people in the State Department, people in Washington, in the Hill, in the Congress. And I think similarly in the conversations that we've had in New York and other capitals, there seems to be this incredible dissonance between how Frantz is saying nobody here is thinking about elections, but internationally there's sort of this obsession with elections. And I wonder, like, how do we explain both the obsession of the international community with the elections, but also why is there no synchronicity between these two conversations? The way that Frantz just put it, like being like, nobody here is thinking about this because this is insane in the middle of what's happening. And yet internationally, like this insistence on having elections. Diego, what is happening and how can we make those two conversations sort of align a little bit better?
Well, I mean, it is, of course, we have to recognize that there is a lack of legitimacy of the new government because there is no elected officials in Haiti for 2 years. There hasn't been a functional parliament since 2020. The last elections were held in 2016, so almost a decade ago. But it would be a mistake to think that just having elections in chaotic conditions without resolving all the logistical challenges, without resolving the security issue first, would just by miracle change completely the situation. In fact, elections many times is what the central part of a corrupt system where political parties join in involved in some kind of collusion with armed groups that have the control of many densely populated areas to have the advantage over their rivals. So currently, the gangs control 90% of the capital and a great part of the Artibonite department. These two departments, the West and the Artibonite department, amounted for 54% of the total votes in 2016 in the last elections. So if we do elections in the current context, in placing polls where, everywhere where they should be, gangs, of course, will have a huge leverage to decide who will win the elections. So several scenarios are being, of course, thought through by the authorities to kind of bypass this gang control over the most densely populated areas in the country. And for example, there is an idea of having staggered elections, elections by phases, focusing first on the regions that are more secure, so that the security forces can really focus on pulling off the free elections in several areas. But of course, that would make that, as the results are coming, we will know who will be leading the race, for example, for president, and the gangs will know who they will have to target or influence to win the elections in other areas. This would also create fights between different influential politicians, so that, for example, elections are held first in the north, whether a specific politician knows that he will have the upper hand and will be in an advantage position since the start of the race. Also, another scenario that is the one that seems to be privileged by the current leadership is to completely leave out the areas that are controlled by the gangs. But that would be elections leaving out over half of the population, and also knowing that the gangs the gang territories are not very, as we saw yesterday, the gangs have their strongholds and their areas of influence. So even if the voting polls are located outside gang territories, the gangs could and will, of course, try to influence the votes that are happening outside these areas. So the most important thing is to note that some people say that bad elections is better than no elections. But here, if we hold elections in this kind of conditions, there will be a post-electoral crisis with parties that contest the results and perhaps the most unprecedented penetration of gangs in the Haitian administration.
Thank you. Frantz, let me turn to you with something that Diego was mentioning right now, which is obviously the fact that this government was created in a rather artificial way, forced by the international community, and is not seen as very legitimate. What do you think needs to happen for the government to be able to regain trust from Haitians? How do you feel is the relationship of Haitians right now vis-a-vis both the Prime Minister, but also the Transitional Presidential Council? And how can the government develop sort of better good faith on the part of just the Haitian population?
Bon, premier bagay pour gouvernement fait, c'est un bagay que le pas fait encore, c'est occuper le problème population. Je prends un paquet d'exemples, mais par exemple qui plus simple, ça a passé là depuis 3 jours dans la région métropolitaine Port-au-Prince, côté grand pile quartier qui a pris attaque, mon a couru, mon a quitté caillou, mon a mouru, et puis pas personne dans le gouvernement qui dit un mot, pas personne dans le gouvernement qui dit que le mandat de la police a laissé mettre l'ordre, pas personne qui demande que des mesures que prend. Ça veut dire que le gouvernement pas travaille pour la population, il pas parler avec la population, il pas inquiet de sa privé la population. Je dis à la moun k'ap gade sa privé Port-au-Prince, c'est un capital qui a tombé lentement mais sûrement, et nous presque quoi au matin n'a le gouvernement dit la locap ou bien la locaille, li quitte capital là. C'est risque ça qui gagne dans Port-au-Prince jodi a. Et indifférence que le gouvernement gagne envers la population, li tue confiance. Jodi a là, nous avons quelques jours d'un changement dans la tête CPTA, quand on va mettre l'autre président. Mais la population a gardé l'abri, l'aime dit l'abri, de façon pour passer une bêtise. Ça va faire nous 3 présidents en un an, et youn pas remettre rien, youn pas régler rien, et youn pas montrer que li inquiet de sa privé, population, capitale là, et pays en général. Toutes questions sont questions de confiance, mais confiance là, li totalement mouri à cause de l'indifférence moun k'ap gouverner.
And do you feel that there is any specific thing? I mean, you're talking obviously about responding to the needs of the population. Would you put security as the most important thing that they have to address? Or what other thing could they do that is that would generate some sort of trust from people in the government?
Sécurité, c'est le premier besoin. L'autre besoin, haïtien, depuis toujours te gen des difficultés économiques, difficultés alimentaires, toutes sortes de difficultés, mais haïtien toujours vivent avec difficultés ça. Ça que nous pas qu'à résoudre là, c'est sécurité. Parce qu'il faut la force publique pour essayer de résoudre le problème de sécurité. Mais il se trouve que on regarde des chiffres. On prend un petit exemple bien simple. L'ONU lance un appel pour aide humanitaire, elle a cherché 900 millions de dollars. Combien qu'on a cherché pour sécurité en Haïti? Pour force sécurité haïtienne. Jodi a là, pas de budget. Le gouvernement a annoncé depuis janvier pour avoir un budget de guerre pour aider force policière avec force sécurité. Dans toute recherche Nouvelliste fait, année passée, il n'y a pas de la police avec l'armée comme assez. Année ça encore, comme il n'y a pas dépensé. Parce que des fois, le budget a existé, mais il n'a pas dépensé parce que c'est l'autorité politique qui a une décision finale là sur sécurité. Qui est-ce qui est autorité politique qui a une décision finale sur sécurité en Haïti? Il y a président CPTA, il y a premier ministre, il y a ministre justice, ministre défense, directeur de la police. Directeur de la police, pas rien dans la signature. Moun qui pour signer, c'est ministre justice. Pour l'armée, c'est ministre défense. 2 moun ça principalement, il n'y a pas rien pour ni à sécurité, ni à l'armée, ni avec la police. Et c'est ça qui arrive nous depuis longtemps. Haïti, depuis 2021, depuis 1er juin 2021, il y a des attaques qu'a faites contre quartier. Et depuis 1er juin 2021, pas jamais il y a des gens qualifiés qui n'ont pas sûr qui prennent les décisions qu'il faut. Et Haïti pas jamais mettre montant financier suffisant pour supporter force sécurité, que c'est l'armée, que c'est la police. Manque d'engagement ça de l'autorité politique, pendant que ce n'est pas COB qui pas gagné, c'est tout simplement COB qui pas investi dans le secteur sécurité. Si le principal problème Haïti c'est sécurité, c'est anormal pour des pensions pas refléter que c'est ça qui est le principal problème nous. C'est ça qui est le problème nous et c'est ça le problème nous depuis très longtemps et malheureusement nous continuons à poursuivre avec le même problème ça. Jodi a là dans les organes, un camp Force armée d'Haïti qui gagne des militaires là-dedans. Il y a une attaque que gang a fait sous grecier sous les organes. Militaires disent pas qu'à faire un, pas recevoir l'ordre, deux, pas équipement. C'est histoire force sécurité en Haïti. Ils sont totalement démunis, ils sont totalement dépourvus, mais surtout, au niveau le plus élevé de l'État haïtien, pas aucun plan, pas aucun discours, pas aucune ambition pour essayer de résoudre le problème de sécurité en Haïti.
Thank you so much. And I see that there's a question in the chat about this. Maybe we can come back in a moment after we've asked Emmanuela and Daniel to participate and maybe unpack a little bit more about the security needs. But Emmanuela, Frantz just painted this very dire picture of what the needs are and the lack of response. But obviously, the international community has been largely invested in Haiti. Some Haitians would say a little bit too much and not necessarily for the good. But considering that, there is at least quite a bit of attention, it's pretty impressive that we have 182 people in this chat, in this broadcast this morning. I think that reflects the interest that there is internationally to what's going on in Haiti. What do you think is the key role for the international community at this moment? How can the world help?
Oh, that's a very important and difficult question because a lot has been said before, and there is the impression that we keep saying it, like when I say we, like the Haitian people, expert organization, yet we keep repeating the same mistake. I do think that Haiti needs to work with the international community. I'll start with this. And because I don't need to go to describe the situation again. So we need help. We need all the help we can get. We need all the assistance we can get, the partnership. We also need it to be done with dignity. We don't need people to decide for the Haitian, but we need people to support the Haitian. The international community can help with funds. Of course, we need money for security, expertise. We need expertise. We need people too. Why not? If they can support us, if they have like elite officer who can help us fight the gangs, we need them for all of those. We need investors to later, when things are better, to come here, to come to Haiti, create jobs, invest. But for now, we really need everyone to kind of understand, okay, let's take a break. Let's assess what have been done. Let's acknowledge the mistake. Let's take credit for what works too. Let's understand, for example, with the multinational security mission, it's not working. So much, it took like a long time to have the first people arriving in Haiti. It's been in discussion for a long time. Imagine you're going to fight like we use the word gangs, but they are like armed groups. It's worse than just gang, as people know gangs in other countries. And then you're giving the impression that you don't have money, you don't have resources, you're sending 10 people, you're sending 6 people at a time. It looks like a mess, and on the ground, it's a mess. It's not even giving the gang the impression that they are coming after them. It's so disorganized, and the image is not working. So we need to work on that, because at the end of the day, all those expenses, they will be labeled as support to Haiti. And when it comes time to evaluate, we will be like, okay, we've been supporting Haiti for a long time, but has it been done the right way? I think there is a need for that. And what I will add is not like it's a problem for the international community to solve. Haitians also has their share of responsibility, and currently the people in charge are not really doing their job as they should. And the perception is that they are working for themselves. There is a lack of interest from the population for what they're doing. It's like people kind of give up on them, which is really bad. There's no accountability. And it's in a sense, I understand why so many people in the international community want elections. There is like a sense of urgency to work with elected officials, people with a clear mandate, people who maybe will think that they are accountable to the people who voted for them, even though in the history of Haiti, this hasn't really changed anything in terms of like what leaders decide to do. But there need to be this balance too. And currently we do not have it. And this is like what I'm really worried about, is that who is in charge? Who is leading now when we need leadership so bad? It's not the transitional presidential council, which obviously is not effective. There are 3 people in this council who are involved in a corruption scandal. They are not accountable to the organization that sent them to this council. They are not following the accord. Like, who is in charge now? Who is trying to make sure that we solve all those problems that were described? Sure, it's not only something for the international community to do. It's about Haitian first, but who in Haiti? I don't know. This is like the puzzle.
Yeah, thank you so much. And let me now turn to Daniel. So obviously the security assistance from both the US, the Kenyan led, and now the UN has been a big component of what's happened in Haiti. Last night, for those who don't follow this super closely, last night the Secretary General sent a letter to the Security Council responding for a request for options on the table on how to respond to the Haitian request for a peacekeeping operation. Then, understanding that the letter has not been made public and that we only know a little bit, could you explain to those joining us today what is on the table as much as we know, and what is the difference between what is being presented and what a peacekeeping operation such as MINUSTA is? And so how is the future looking in this sense of international security cooperation?
Absolutely. This is a very dynamic question. Diplomats here in New York have been waiting months to receive the letter that just reached their inboxes. Based on the conversations we've had in New York and UN Secretary General Guterres' remarks at the CARICOM summit a few days ago, where he gave an overview of what the UN was going to recommend to the Security Council, the basic pitch of the UN is that they want to recommend providing logistics support to the MSS. They encourage the establishment of a new UN office there, and it would be paid for through the UN's peacekeeping budget and provide a range of non-lethal assistance to the MSS. That's everything from fuel, medical assistance, IT and communications, temporary bases that would be funded and assisted through the UN instead of currently being sourced voluntarily through either the countries contributing to the MSS or international partners such as the United States and others. I think 2 big distinctions to make in the proposal that we expect to come through. First is that the UN would not be funding lethal equipment to the countries contributing to the MSS. And secondly, the salaries of the troops to the MSS would be paid through voluntary funding from member states to the UN through the already established trust fund that is currently backstopping much of the Kenyan-led missions work right now. There are a few big distinctions besides those obvious ones about how this is different from a UN peacekeeping operation. Most principally, even though the MSS received a mandate from the Security Council in terms of its authorization, it is not a UN-led or mandated mission. That means that, the UN is not in direct control of all of the strategic oversight in terms of the operational planning. Sure, it's provided a lot of advice, but the MSS is very much a Kenyan-led mission with the support of its voluntary partners. This logistics model that's being presented to the council would still heavily depend on voluntary contributions for the things that the MSS is lacking most, which is funds for its personnel and the lethal equipment needed to actually empower troops on the ground and the police on the ground to effectively counter the gangs. There are also some, longer term considerations that the logistics office in and of itself may not encourage more troops and more countries to contribute to the MSS. We understand that the Secretary General's proposal suggests a number of other functions that the UN could provide, ranging to intelligence capabilities, human rights monitoring, due diligence, and administrative support. Through the current model that it would be put forward, this would be done in very much a mix and match kind of model instead of having everything come under an integrated UN umbrella. So what you may have is, should this approach go through, you would still have the MSS, you would still have BNU, the UN political office, which is providing civilian-led good governance and state building assistance to the Haitian authorities. And you'd have a third UN support office, which would be doing the logistics and sort of operational assistance under a UN mandate. So what that ultimately leads is you have many different chefs in the kitchen, each doing part of the job at a moment when there are open questions about whether, even if the MSS reaches its full capabilities of 2,500 personnel, whether that will actually be enough to stem the tide of a worsening situation. So these are some of the considerations that diplomats here in New York will be grappling with over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Dan. I think that really helps, and I think that connects with some of the questions that are being asked in the Q&A. So maybe I'll just switch strictly to the question of security, and maybe I'll ask the three of you, Frantz, Emmanuela, Diego, to give me a two-liners. What do you think is the core thing that could be done to address the security situation? Obviously, we know that there's been violence in Haiti for a long time, not to the extent that we're seeing it today, but this is a historical tendency. If it was in your power to really do 1, 2 things that you think will change things on the ground, what would that be? And sort of what is at the core of the problem of the long-standing violence? And maybe I'll throw Diego into the pool first for that one.
Sorry. Well, difficult to say that this is, of course, the main question for Haiti right now. But I would say that first, the government has to focus on that. The equivalent to a national security advisor was just appointed in January. So that would mean between 8 and 9 months after the Presidential Council was established. And this national security advisor, Mario Andresol, who is a former police director, is tasked with elaborating a national security strategy. So, of course, that would have been done months ago, but now that there is also a need to establish a national security council that would be tasked with coordinating security assistance with foreign partners, while the national security advisor brings together an integrated strategy to see how all fits together with the resources that are in Haiti, and coordinated also with the National Security Council how what kind of security aid is needed by Haitians right now, because there hasn't been such an assessment of what should be done and what is needed, what are the specific lacks to implement a security strategy. I think that would be the main recommendation right now for the leadership of the government to put in place the right and the specific bodies that should be focusing on this, and also to stop to the possible extent to stop the power struggles between the different people that have key positions in dealing with the security issue. There has been some rifts between the people that have influence over the police director, over the national security advisor, on the people that want to appoint maybe people that they can influence in the National Security Council. So there has to be, people have to be to, to grasp the severity of the situation. The gangs are in Kenskov. The gangs are attacking Tabak right now. They could mount a siege on Petionville in the coming weeks or months, and the situation is extremely dire right now. The politicians have to, even if they know that the security situation has been extremely difficult for several months and years. Now is the time to act in concert and representing the interests of millions of Haitians who fear for their lives.
Thank you. Frantz, let me turn to you. How do you react to the idea that there won't be a peacekeeping operation? And what do you think is the core security issue that you would like to see happen in the coming months to at least alleviate the situation a little bit?
Bon, pas de mission de maintien de la paix, c'est même histoire qui a continué. En réalité, ça fait 3 ans, il y a fait haïtien au viron. Et ça fait 3 ans tout que le gouvernement haïtien n'est pas assez clair sur ça l'a demandé, sur ça le souhaité. Un problème crise haïtienne, c'est que l'on pas bien bail non en situation, ou pas qu'à jouer une solution pour lui. Là, nous tout a parlé de gang, sauf que les mots gang n'arrivent dans les oreilles pays côté gang yo, son bagage très, t'as dit, presque civilisé comparé à ça n'a vivre en Haïti, qui dépasse limite gang. Li leur pour ça qui passe en Haïti, yo bal vrai non li. Li leur que ça qui passe en Haïti, yo comprennent que c'est pas une question de police, mais c'est plus que ça. Li leur pour un vrai budget pour force de sécurité yo. Li leur pour yo vraiment mettre sous pied une vraie coordination des forces de sécurité. Diego se parlait de Mario André Sol qui est nommé responsable, c'est pas ça lié du tout. Mario André Sol, son secrétaire d'État qui est en bas ministre justice là, non secrétaire d'État pas existé, qui pas de moun là-dedans, qui pas de cerveau là-dedans, qui pas de moyen là-dedans et qui pas qu'à signer et qui a un ordre dans l'administration publique haïtienne. En réalité, c'est pas un vrai conseiller à la sécurité nationale que lié, c'est tout simplement un secrétaire d'État. D'ailleurs, depuis le nommé, on ne peut jamais entendre le président ni faire déclaration, ni prendre décision. Il se trouve que, jodi, en plus de tout problème que nous avons, il y a un gourmet entre exécutif là, directeur de la police là. Jusqu'à présent, jodi, exécutif là, par contre, si pour l'armée des moyens, des équipements, ainsi pour l'armée des moyens, des équipements. Comment on veut pour un pays qui a mené une bataille, Jean-Haïti a mené une bataille là, mais nous pas qu'à déterminer ni ressources financières qui adéquates à la situation, ni allouer ressources qui existent à force qui a mené bataille là. Parce que à chaque fois, il y a des arrière-pensées dans tête moun qui fait politique yo, un jour matin qui a besoin de gang yo. Alors, c'est pas une vraie bataille qu'a fait, seule victime qui est réelle, c'est la population. Mais autorité pour le moment, yo pas jamais qu'à décider vraiment est-ce que vous voulez éradiquer gang yo, est-ce que vous voulez parler à gang yo pour faire la paix à gang yo parce que ça c'est une option tout. Qui ça vous voulez exactement, pas quoi que autorité yo, jodia, tant que ça hier yo, Ariel Henry ou bien Jovenel Moïse, kon qui ça vous voulez faire exactement. Et tant que nous pas décider de qui ça nous voulait faire exactement, c'est tant nous n'a perdu. Et tant que nous pas décider tout qui ça nous voulait, communauté internationale a fait commencer à nous des options qui pas qu'à résoudre problème nous. MMAS là, il pas résoudre problème sécurité, il pas efficace, il pas assez moyens, il pas assez capacité. Nous voyons l'option que l'ONU a proposée, il pas résoudre rien non plus. Alors, un jour matin, il faut qu'Haïti finisse par dire, mes problèmes, moi, mais qui ça me veut mettre sous lui comme option de solution. Moi, je crois que c'est là, nous trois indéterminés. Et dans non crise là, et dans modèle de solution que crise a besoin.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And anything on your side? It seems that Diego and Frantz are really sort of aligning on the need for the Haitians to chart a path forward and then be able to, have an international community that is cohesive behind that plan. Are you in agreement with that diagnosis?
Definitely. And I think what Haiti needs right now in terms of security can be summarized in like 2 words: a good strategy, from there we will have everything we need, because we haven't it's obvious that we don't have one now. Like, I haven't read any document that has described. I've read document about the gangs, how many they are, what they have in terms of resource, who's sponsoring them, but no one has been able to tell me how long will it take to fight those gangs. Let's say those armed groups, let's say we want to dismantle them all. How long will it take? How much will it cost? How many people will we need? What do we have now? What is missing? We don't know. We've been asking for help, but it's very vague. There hasn't been an effort to convince the population that there is a plan either. That's why they resorted to like options like vigilante and sad, but they've been sometimes more effective than the police themselves, although it put the citizen in harm's way. We need a strategy. We need a plan, and then we need resources to fund this strategy, people to implement it, and we need justice, because we're talking about a peacekeeping mission. We had one before. It didn't work. Like, we had a mission that was there for like several years and costed billions of dollars. And what's the outcome? Less than 10 years later, we have the worst security crisis the country has faced in recent time. This means that something went wrong. We didn't invest in the forces we have. We have a police, but do we have specialized unit? Do we have like, why do we have to wait for the MMS to have the equipment that we have now? We should have had them like a long time ago. How much a police officer is earning to risk his or her life? All those things need to be think about and implement and included in a strategy. And then we can say that, okay, we are trying to solve this very, very critical issue.
Thank you. And then maybe I'll bring you in this, because there's a question in the chat regarding what exactly is the role of the MSS and now this logistical support package in this question. Some people think that the MSS was really supposed to be there to just protect public infrastructure, ports, etc. But there seems to be this consensus that there needs to be kinetic operations, and that really the engagement of the forces attacking the gangs in their strongholds are a central part of this conversation. So how do you see this happening under this new model? We have a peacekeeping operation meant something different in that sense. How does that square with the international offer on the table?
Absolutely. So the MSS is mandated or authorized by the council to do two things. One is to support the HNP in its own operations against the gangs, and two is to provide protection to critical infrastructure, everything from ports and on oil reserves. The first part depends on the Haitian National Police, and throughout this conversation, it seems quite clear that the strategic guidance that they're giving to the MSS is just not up to the moment, quite frankly. The MSS is not necessarily going to go out and do these kinetic operations on its own or independent of Haitian leadership and vision and quick details. And what we've seen is much of the time since June, when the MSS first deployed, is just trying to get them and the MSS on the same page about how to do these daily operations. I think the broader question about where peacekeeping comes in, I just want to emphasize the point that whether it is the MSS or a UN peacekeeping operation, these ultimately need to be security responses that create the space for a comprehensive political engagement. And I think, that's one of the big questions that's rumbling around the UN is, whether the security comes first or how you use that to create a political framework. And that's one that the UN cannot solve on its own, and perhaps leads us into this cycle of something that many are concerned about, is repeating past challenges with UN deployments to Haiti and making billions of dollars worth of investments and not seeing them having produce any more as a sustainable outcome. I think that one of the big concerns for us right now is ultimately whether this measure of a logistics approach and providing more support through both the UN budget and continued reliance on voluntary contributions is sustainable or is just a mere temporary or interim measure that allows the UN to avoid some of the more difficult and grappling questions. And I think that's something that colleagues here in New York need to really take considerably, because right now what Haiti needs, and based on all of this work and these conversations, is not interim measures. It's an effect that's sustainable and works with the Haitian population and leadership to actually deliver these gains at a really challenging time.
Thank you. And mindful of the time, I just want to do a last round of comments from you guys on a topic that is not necessarily addressed in the report, but that seems to be coming up. Certainly something that we at Crisis Group have been talking a lot about, which is the possibility of engaging in some sort of negotiation with the gangs. Faced with this chronic violence situation in which it seems highly unlikely that there's going to be a fully military solution, that we're going to defeat these criminal groups in their entirety, and also understanding that there can be negotiations like the ones that have been established in Colombia and Mexico and other parts to reduce violence through talks. What do you think about this possibility? Is this something that the Haitians would be open to engage in some kind of conversation? And maybe I'll ask Frantz to respond first from the Haitian perspective. How do you see that, the idea of engaging in talks with the gangs?
Jodi la, même jan pa gen person kap di ke yo vle défaite gang yo vle bat gang yo vle krasé gang yo, pa gen moun kap po diskou sa, pa gen moun non plus to nan classe politique la kap po diskou di, an chita bon tab pou nou ki sa nou ka résoudre. Jodi la, yon nan bagay ki rive nan situation Haïti a vive la, c'est que gon désert de proposition, pa gen moun kap propose an, ni sous qui jan que nous ka contenu gang yo, ba même di krasé non, contenu, c'est-à-dire kembe yo non certaines limites, ni qui jan ka repousser yo, fait back, encore moins qui jan nous ka parler avec yo pour nous dire bon, nous fa assez, qui ça nous veut exactement. Personne pas porter discours ça en Haïti, et souvent les solutions parlées à évoquer, population très choquée tandis ça. Population pas qu'à comprendre que des gens qui fin tuer, qui fin bouler kaili, qui fin violer, qui fin kidnapper, et puis nous disons pour faire la paix avec eux. Mais moun qui a regardé un petit gens avec recul, dit quelle que soit la guerre, un jour finit bon table. Est-ce que Haïti, ça a pris un jour? Peut-être, mais pour le moment, option ça, personne ne va pousser.
Thank you, Frantz. Emmanuela, what's your take on this? If, for example, the international community came with a proposal to engage with the gangs, do you think that would be well received?
I think it depends on how we frame it. I believe the process is as important as the outcome. It's not only about peace, it's about how we achieve that peace and what signal we send. Haiti is in desperate need of justice and accountability. We need to hold people accountable. And I've heard like many takes from bomb the area where the gangs are, which is like how you're going to kill innocent. This is like extreme. And same for like grant amnesty to all the gangs leader, everyone involved in gangs, supporting them. This is as extreme. Who is gonna be held accountable? But I do think that expert, like people working on this issue seriously, will have their own strategy. Of course, there are people in those gangs group that are like young people who still can do things in society. Of course, there are things that can be done, and I'm not like an expert in how they fight gangs per se, so I don't go into those details. But what matters for me is how it is done, the signal that are being sent. It's not about saying, okay, you've done a lot of harm to society, but we can forget about all of it. It's not about say go and kill all those people and then the people who finance them, the people who support them, no one goes to jail, no one is held accountable. Nope, it's not about this. I think there are other ways to approach it, and while being mindful about the signal we send and how Haiti needs justice and accountability, and how we make sure that in the process we do not betray those ideals.
Thank you so much, Diego.
Yes, absolutely. The whole question is how to engage in dialogue with gangs that have committed such unspeakable crimes to several hundreds of thousands of people, that have raped, that have killed, that have burned houses, that have burned people alive, that are dismembering people on the streets. I mean, this is unspeakable violence, and people just don't understand how we could, and it is unacceptable to deal with this kind of groups just in negotiations without engaging with them, or fighting them. So before there is any kind of tangible change in security, in the security situation, and also symbolic victories against the gangs, this idea won't be acceptable in Haiti, and that's certain. If there is at some point, some questions will have to be raised at some point. How to completely dismantle these gangs? Could we just completely erase the gangs and solve the gang problem with just bullets and fights in the streets? Maybe not. So, and also, we could maybe, if we have the possibility of killing all gang members, are we willing to kill half of the gangs troops who are minors? That would are we ready to kill 5,000 children that have been forced either by the groups or by the conditions in which they live in to join these structures? These are very important questions that at some points will have to be raised. And also, the killing Cherizier, killing Vitelhomme, killing Chisla, killing Mikanor will not solve the gang problem. The gang problem has its roots on poverty, on inequality, and on the absence of state. So these gang leaders that people want to see hanging and dead are just the tip of the iceberg. But these people also have invaluable information about who their partners are within the elites, where are the stocks of weapons, how they access to weapons that are coming illegally from other countries. So it is a question that will have to be raised at some point, but right now it is not the time.
Sorry, thank you so much, Diego, and thank you, everybody. We have hit the mark of the time, and we want to be mindful that both Frantz and Emmanuela have other things to do. We want to be grateful. I'm going to apologize because there were a number of questions in the Q&A that we did not have the chance to respond. And obviously the situation in Haiti is a very critical one, and there's questions about drug trafficking, about how to correctly name the gangs. Are they really criminal groups? Are they organized transnational groups? How, for example, the flux of weapons from the United States and other countries in the region is affecting the situation. There's a number of very important issues that unfortunately we won't be able to get to in the allotted time today. But, here at Crisis Group, we will continue to remain very closely watching what's happening in Haiti and what happens to the future. I think that the very central call that we heard in today's morning is to the Haitian elites to really step up to the situation that the country is facing, and that the politicians, unfortunately, are really sorely failing to do what they need to do. And clearly the prioritization of a security strategy that is effective and clear and that can mobilize the international community behind it, it needs to be the first step to be taken. Thank you very much. Thank you to Frantz and Emmanuela in particular, our listeners both in Haiti and abroad. And for those of you who have not seen the report, you can find it at our website, which is crisisgroup.org, www.crisisgroup.org. We hope that by Friday it will be also available in French and Creole. And I believe that some of the questions to the unanswered, some of the answers to the unanswered questions will be found there. Thank you so very much, and we'll see you hopefully soon in another event of this kind.